Silas Decker had no idea the sidewalk outside his own skyscraper would be the thing to take him down. 1 second he was striding out of Decker Holdings' glass tower with his phone pressed to his ear, barking orders at his legal team, and the next his ankle twisted like hell, his knee buckled, and he went down hard on the concrete. The phone skidded into the street. His jaw clenched as pain shot up his leg, cold and sharp. He hissed through his teeth and tried to push himself up, but the minute he shifted weight onto his right foot, white-hot pain screamed through him. "Hey! Don't move, just stay still." A woman dropped to her knees beside him. He blinked up at her. She was not part of security, not someone from his building, not anyone he recognized. She had chestnut hair pulled into a messy knot, no makeup, jeans that looked like she'd actually worked in them, and a canvas tote slung over one shoulder. "I think it's sprained," she said, already tugging at the cuff of his tailored pants. "You landed bad." "I'm fine," Silas grunted, trying again to get up. Her hands, small, warm, firm, stopped him. "Stop being a macho idiot." "You're not," she said, sharp and confident. "You can't walk. Trust me, I've seen enough of these to know." His eyes narrowed. "You a doctor or something?" "Close enough," she said. "I'm a nurse." Silas wasn't used to being manhandled, let alone by someone who smelled faintly of vanilla and looked like she'd walked straight out of a Sunday farmer's market. But something about her no-nonsense tone and the way she was already checking his ankle despite his $1,000 pants made him pause. "Paramedics are gonna take forever downtown," she muttered. "Look, I live 2 blocks away. Let me help you off the sidewalk before someone with a camera shows up." He didn't answer. He was still trying to process how this woman had no idea who he was. She glanced up, clearly impatient. "I'm not gonna rob you. You think I want whatever's in your suit jacket? Come on." And just like that, Silas let a complete stranger loop his arm over her shoulders and half carry him to the curb where she flagged down a cab like she owned the street. "Put your leg across the seat," she ordered, climbing in after him. He blinked at her. "You're bossy. You're lucky I'm not charging you for this," she shot back. "Name?" "Silas." She didn't react. No wide eyes. No recognition. Just a nod. "I'm Vivien. Vivien Carter." The cab rolled through the streets while Silas tried not to groan every time they hit a bump. Vivien's hand rested lightly on his knee, stabilizing him. She gave the driver an address, and 10 minutes later they were in front of a brownstone with flower boxes and chipped paint. It was normal. Small. Human. "You live here?" he asked, surprised. "Yeah," she said, giving him a look. "You expecting a castle?" He didn't answer. She helped him up the steps, every movement efficient and careful, like she'd done this 100 times before. Once inside, she directed him to sit on the old couch, then disappeared into what he assumed was her kitchen. His gaze scanned the apartment. It was small but clean. Photos lined the fireplace: an older woman, probably her mom, and a little boy with big brown eyes and a toothy grin. "Here," Vivien said, coming back with a bucket of ice water and a towel. "Foot up." He did as she said, biting back a groan as she carefully elevated his leg and wrapped the towel around ice. "You live alone?" he asked. She hesitated. "No. My son gets home from school at 3. "You're a mom. Is that a problem?" she said, raising an eyebrow. "No. Just didn't expect it." "You're young." Vivien shrugged. "Life happens." He watched her as she checked his ankle, her fingers gentle but sure. She didn't ask why he'd been in such a rush, didn't ask about his job, didn't ask for anything, really. It was disarming. "You're lucky," she said after a moment. "It's a bad sprain but not a break. You'll need to stay off it for a few days, ice it, elevate, and maybe use crutches." "I don't have time for that." "You don't have a choice." Silas leaned back, groaning. "I've got meetings, investors." "You've got one ankle," she interrupted. "And it's pissed off. Call someone. Reschedule." Her tone made him grin. "You always talk to strangers like this?" "Only the ones who think they're invincible." He laughed, and it surprised them both. Vivien smiled faintly, then got up and disappeared again, returning with a glass of water and painkillers. Before he could say thank you, the front door opened. "Mom," a little voice called. Silas watched as a boy no older than 7 bounded in, backpack swinging behind him. "Hey baby," Vivien said, crouching down. "We've got a guest. He got hurt and needed help." The boy looked over curiously, then walked up to Silas and held out a hand. "I'm Nolan." Silas shook it. "Silas. Nice to meet you." "Mom's really good at fixing people," Nolan said proudly. "I can see that," Silas said, smiling. Vivien ruffled her son's hair, then turned back to Silas. "You need a ride home?" He hesitated. "I live across the city. I'd need help getting up to my penthouse." She blinked. "Penthouse?" He gave her a look. "You really don't know who I am, do you?" Vivien shrugged. "Should I?" "I'm Silas Decker." Still no reaction. He stared at her, waiting for it to click. It didn't. "Decker Holdings?" he added. She tilted her head. "Sorry. I've been busy raising a kid and working 2 jobs. Silas let out a breath. She was serious. She didn't know and she didn't care. And somehow that landed harder than anything else. It felt good. "You want dinner?" Vivien asked, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "It's just spaghetti, but there's enough." He hadn't eaten with someone at a kitchen table in years. "Yeah," he said. "I'd like that." She nodded, then looked at him with a small smile that hit him in the chest. "All right, Mr. Important. Let's get you fed." And just like that, Silas Decker, billionaire, CEO, untouchable, sat on a modest couch in Brooklyn with his foot on a pillow, ice wrapped around his ankle, and the faint smell of tomato sauce wafting from the kitchen. He had no idea yet, but the woman nursing his injury was about to become the greatest love of his life. Silas hadn't expected to wake up on a couch with the sound of cartoons playing softly in the background and the aroma of cinnamon toast drifting through the air. He blinked against the morning sun filtering through gauzy curtains. A fleece blanket had been draped over him at some point in the night, and his ankle, still elevated on a pillow, was no longer throbbing. For once, his phone wasn't buzzing with alerts. It was off, lying on the coffee table next to a glass of water and a handwritten note that read, "Call me if your pain worsens, Vivien." He pushed himself upright slowly. The apartment was quiet except for distant giggles from the back room. Before he could call out, Vivien appeared around the corner, barefoot and holding a plate of toast in one hand and a juice box in the other. "You're up," she said, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "I figured you'd sleep through breakfast, but I saved you some eggs." "I don't usually sleep at strangers' places," he replied, sitting straighter. "But this couch has got better hospitality than most 5-star hotels." She gave him a quick glance, then disappeared into the kitchen. He heard dishes clink. "You're welcome," she called. "Though I think you owe that couch an apology. It's been a trooper since college." He shifted, carefully testing his ankle. "Still tender, but manageable." "What time is it?" "Almost 8. I kept Nolan home today. He's got a mild fever." "Nothing serious?" Silas frowned. "He's sick. Just run down. It's been a long week for him. School, homework, me working nights. It adds up." He hesitated. "Who watches him when you're at the hospital?" "My upstairs neighbor," she said, returning with a steaming mug of something that smelled like coffee but had a hint of caramel. "Retired teacher. Loves Nolan. He calls her his backup mom." He accepted the mug. "You always taken wounded CEOs off the street?" Vivien leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "Only the ones who face plant dramatically in front of traffic. It's a screening process." He chuckled. "You know, one of my assistants probably thinks I got kidnapped." "Wouldn't be the worst thing for your blood pressure," she said. "You looked like you were ready to set fire to your own phone yesterday." He sipped the coffee. She was right, it was strong, sweet, and oddly perfect. "I'm used to chaos." "Maybe you shouldn't be." He studied her. She spoke like someone who didn't fear consequences. Like someone who didn't care that he could buy and sell the building she lived in without blinking. "You don't get fazed, do you?" Vivien shrugged. "I've seen worse than a man in a designer suit whining about a sprain." "Didn't whine. You winced like the world was ending." He opened his mouth, then closed it. She had a point. Nolan appeared in the doorway then, wrapped in a blanket, cheeks flushed. "Can I show him my rocket drawings?" Vivien crouched next to him. "Sure, baby. Just don't stay on your feet too long. Okay?" Silas watched her touch his forehead gently before nodding to the couch. Nolan hurried over, clutching a sketch pad. Silas moved aside as Nolan plopped down carefully. "This one's the Mars mission," he said proudly, flipping to a page covered in red crayon streaks, and a spaceship with a name scrawled across it, Vivien 1. "She has a rocket named after her?" Silas asked. Nolan beamed. "She's the captain of everything." Vivien, now in the kitchen again, laughed. "That's because I'm the only one who remembers to pack snacks for space." Nolan looked up at Silas. "What do you do?" "I build things, mostly. Companies, buildings, stuff like that." "Can you build a rocket?" Silas hesitated. "Not yet, but I know people who could." Nolan's eyes widened. "Even ones that go to Jupiter? If that's where you want to go." Vivien appeared in the doorway again, towel drying her hands. "He'll hold you to that. Last year, he made the UPS guy promise to deliver a message to Pluto." Silas grinned. "Did he?" "Came back with a sticker and a story. Nolan still thinks Pluto's got a coffee shop." They shared a look, brief but charged. And in that second, something shifted. Vivien cleared her throat and moved to the coat rack. "I've got a half shift today. My neighbor's coming down to sit with Nolan. You should probably head home." "I called a car service." Silas frowned. "You're kicking me out?" "I'm making sure you don't keep treating my living room like a corporate hideout." He rose slowly, testing his weight. "What if I wanted to see you again?" She paused, keys in hand. "You're the type who forgets people like me exist once you're back in your corner office." "You don't know anything about my type." Vivien tilted her head. "You didn't even know how to hail a cab." He stepped closer, ignoring the throb in his foot. "You're wrong. About the cab or about you?" "Both." Her eyes flicked over his face, searching. "Look, I appreciate what we shared yesterday. But you and I? We're on different planets. I can fly." She blinked. "What?" "I have a jet. I can fly to your planet." Vivien let out a breath, half laugh, half disbelief. "You're ridiculous." "I'm persistent." She opened the door just as a silver car pulled up outside. "Go home, Silas?" He lingered. "You didn't answer my question." She didn't turn around. "What question?" "If I wanted to see you again." Vivien stood still for a long moment, then finally looked over her shoulder. "You're not used to hearing no, are you?" "Not when I mean it." She bit her lip, then said softly, "If you really want to see me again, show up when it's not convenient for you." Then she stepped outside and closed the door behind her. Silas stood there, ankle burning, heart thudding, and for the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about mergers or markets or his next acquisition. He was thinking about a woman who didn't care who he was and a boy who believed Pluto had a coffee shop. And something told him, inconvenient or not, he'd be back. 2 days passed before Silas returned. Not because he hadn't wanted to sooner, he'd thought about it every hour since limping into the back seat of that silver car, but because it had taken that long to rearrange his entire schedule, cancel his trip to Tokyo, and clear 3 consecutive afternoons without board meetings. His assistant had stared at him like he'd grown a second head. "You're turning down the Blackstone acquisition meeting for personal reasons?" she'd asked. "Yes. You never have personal reasons." "I do now." Now he stood outside Vivien's brownstone again, wearing jeans and a gray sweater instead of a suit. A black medical boot encased his right foot, and he carried a paper bag in one hand. Inside was a small white box with a blue ribbon and a hand-drawn card he'd had someone from Creative mock up to look like a spaceship. Nolan's name was printed in shaky silver ink across the top. He rang the doorbell once, twice. A few seconds later, the door opened and Vivien stood there in dark leggings and a faded navy t-shirt, a damp towel draped over her shoulder. Her hair was wet and swept to one side like she'd just stepped out of the shower. "You're back," she said, not moving from the doorway. "I said I would be. I didn't think you'd actually show." "I said I would when it wasn't convenient," he said. "I canceled Tokyo for this." She blinked. "Tokyo? I had a meeting. I moved it." "For what?" He held up the bag. "To deliver a spaceship." Her expression shifted, unsure whether to be amused or exasperated. You didn't have to bring him anything. I wanted to. She studied him for a long moment, then stepped aside. He's upstairs. Fever's down. You can give it to him after lunch. Silas stepped inside. The living room looked a little different. There was a laundry basket near the couch and a mug of tea on the windowsill. It was lived in, imperfect. And he'd missed it. Your ankle looks like an armored tank, she said, nodding at the boot. Doctor's orders. No stairs, no stress, no sudden movements. You're great at following directions, I'm sure. I'm learning. Vivien headed into the kitchen, calling over her shoulder. You want coffee or something else? Whatever you're having. Silas followed her slowly, careful not to put weight on the boot. The kitchen was small with pale blue cabinets and a chalkboard wall filled with scribbled stars, checklists, and a grocery list that included juice boxes and more cereal. He watched her pour 2 mugs and hand him one. Her fingers brushed his briefly, and something in his chest jolted. I didn't expect you to come back, she said quietly. I didn't expect you to stay in my head this long. Vivien looked up. You don't even know me. I know I want to. She shook her head, almost laughing. You don't get it. This isn't your world, Silas. My life is messy. It's school drop-offs and late shifts and second-hand everything. It's prioritizing rent over vacations. I'm not offering you a vacation. Then what are you offering? He set the mug down. A chance. To see what this could be. Vivien leaned against the counter, arms crossed. I've done the impulsive thing before. It gave me Nolan and a whole lot of lessons I didn't ask for. Silas stepped closer. I'm not asking you to gamble everything. Just dinner. One real dinner. With me. Somewhere that doesn't have cartoons playing in the background. She tilted her head. You want to take me out? Yes. Where? I'll let you choose. She looked genuinely surprised. What if I pick a diner? Then I'll eat pancakes and pretend they're the most luxurious thing I've ever tasted. Vivien's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. You're serious. I don't joke about things that matter. Silas didn't look away. There was no bravado in his voice, no charm for effect. Just honesty. Finally, she exhaled. Tomorrow, around 6. I get off early. I'll be here. I'll be in scrubs. Good. Then I'll know it's really you. Before she could respond, a pair of light footsteps came down the stairs. Nolan appeared at the bottom, rubbing his eyes and holding a stuffed astronaut in one hand. Silas lifted the bag. I brought something. For your missions. Nolan's eyes lit up as he took the package. He sat on the floor without hesitation and opened it, revealing a model rocket, sleek, silver, and engraved along the side with the name Captain Nolan. You made this? He asked in awe. I had some help, but yeah. It's for your next launch. Nolan hugged it to his chest. Best one ever. Vivien's eyes softened as she watched her son, and Silas caught the flicker of something behind her gaze, something too cautious to be hope, too fragile to be trust. But it was there. Later, after lunch and a quiet goodbye, Silas stepped back into the waiting car, his boot thudding softly against the floor mat. His driver asked if they were heading back to the penthouse. Silas looked out the window toward the brownstone. No, he said. Not yet. He had a dinner to plan. And this time he wasn't going to let her carry the weight of everything alone. Vivien had never seen a restaurant like this in real life. Not from the outside, where crystal chandeliers glowed behind floor-to-ceiling windows, or from the inside, where a maitre d' greeted her by name before leading her down a long corridor of candlelit tables set with heavy silverware and fresh orchids. The place didn't feel like something she should be walking through in sneakers and scrubs. But Silas had insisted, come as you are. I'm not here to impress you. I'm here for you. She hadn't expected him to rent the entire rooftop. But when the elevator doors opened and warm light spilled out, she found herself standing beneath a canopy of hanging lanterns, soft music playing from a string quartet in the far corner. A table for 2 sat in the center, set with champagne glasses and a small vase of white tulips. Silas stood beside it, wearing a dark blue jacket over a white shirt, no tie, his boot replaced with a sleek black shoe. His hair was slightly tousled, like he'd run his hand through it one too many times. When he saw her, he straightened, looking uncertain for the first time since they met. "I wasn't sure if you'd show," he said. Vivien stepped closer. "I almost didn't. What changed your mind?" "I figured if you were going to go to all this trouble, I could at least hear what you had to say." He pulled out her chair, and she sat, adjusting the edge of her scrub top. She felt wildly out of place and completely underdressed, but he didn't seem to notice. Or maybe he did and didn't care. He filled her glass with sparkling water. "You said once that I didn't know you. I think you were right." Vivien arched a brow. "And now you do?" "I know enough to want more." He leaned forward. "I know you eat cereal at midnight when you're too tired to cook. I know you hum when you clean. I know Nolan trusts you more than gravity." She folded her hands in her lap. "That's not knowing me. That's watching." "I've been paying attention," he said, softer now. "Because you're the first person in years who's looked at me without expecting anything." "I didn't ask for this," she said. "I know." He hesitated, then added, "But I'm asking now. For a chance. Not just tonight." Vivien looked around the rooftop, the lights, the skyline stretching behind him like a painting. "This isn't real, Silas. This is a dream. And I wake up every morning to rent notices and PTO forms and a kid who thinks Pluto has a coffee shop." "You said once that you've seen worse," he said. "So give me the chance to be better." She exhaled. "What do you even want with someone like me?" "Everything," he said without flinching. "I want nights on the couch and early mornings when Nolan can't find his shoes. I want to complain about your hospital hours and help you fix the faucet when it breaks. I want the hard stuff, the messy parts. All of it." Vivien stared at him. "You don't even flinch, do you?" "I flinch every time I think about what it'd be like to go back to pretending you didn't exist." The waiter appeared then with 2 silver-domed platters. He set them down and lifted the lids. Vivien blinked in surprise. Chicken parmesan, mashed potatoes, broccoli with lemon zest. Nothing fancy, nothing unpronounceable. "You asked me to show up when it wasn't convenient," Silas said. "So I'm here. With your favorite dinner made by the chef of a Michelin-starred kitchen who now knows what boxed mashed potatoes taste like." Her lips parted. "How did you, Nolan?" he said simply. "He said you always make this when he's sick. Said it smells like home." Vivien stared at the plate. The scent was perfect. Spot on. She couldn't speak for a moment. Silas picked up his fork. "I bribed a world-renowned chef with floor seats to the Knicks. Worth it." Vivien laughed despite herself. "You're insane." "I'm in love," he said. She froze. Silas didn't look away. "I didn't plan to say it tonight. But I'm not going to pretend I don't feel it. You changed everything for me, Vivien. What matters. What I want. You slowed me down just enough to see what I was missing." Her throat tightened. "And if I can't give you the kind of life you're used to, then I'll trade that life for yours," he said. "Every day of the week. No hesitation." She stared at him, heart pounding. "You'd really do that?" "I already have," he said. "I stepped out of a meeting this morning because Nolan wanted help with his science project. I haven't done that for anyone. Ever." Vivien's eyes burned, but she didn't look away. "He likes you." "I want to earn that," Silas said. "And yours." The air between them shifted. Not heavy, not uncertain, just full of something unspoken and waiting. Vivien reached across the table, her fingers brushing his. He gently took her hand. "Say yes." "To what?" "To whatever this turns into." She held his gaze, then nodded once. "Okay." He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. Their lips met lightly, but something deep passed between them, something solid and real and full of promise. Later, he walked her to the car, their hands still joined. "Where are we going?" she asked, glancing at the sleek black vehicle. "Home," he said. "To Brooklyn. Nolan's expecting us." She smiled, leaning into him as they sat side by side in the back seat. Back at the brownstone, the windows glowed faintly. A light was on upstairs. Silas helped her out of the car, careful not to let go of her hand. Before they reached the door, she stopped him. "You sure about this?" she asked. "I was sure the moment you told me to stop being a macho idiot in front of 100 people. She laughed. "You're still limping. I'll limp my whole life if it means I get to walk beside you." She opened the door and he followed her inside. And just like that, the man who once ruled towers of glass and steel stepped into a second-floor walk-up with peeling paint, a 7-year-old with a telescope, and a woman who smelled faintly of vanilla and never once cared what his last name meant. He'd never been richer. Vivien hadn't seen the inside of Silas's apartment before. Not really. That night she'd helped him home from the fall, she'd assumed he lived in some sprawling, sleek penthouse, but she hadn't imagined this. The elevator opened directly into a space that stretched wide with floor-to-ceiling glass, casting the entire city in gold from the setting sun. The ceilings were high enough to echo, but the lighting was warm, deliberate. Art not the kind you find in a catalog, but the kind that made you feel something hung on the walls. The furniture was elegant, but not cold, and the scent in the air wasn't cologne or polish. It was cedar and something faintly spicy. Lived in. Real. Vivien glanced around, unsure where to step. Silas took her bag and set it on a bench near the entrance. I didn't want you to see this place until I knew it'd mean something. She looked at him. It's beautiful. It's hollow without you, he said. It always was. He led her down a hallway lined with black and white photographs of old buildings, some mid-demolition, others restored. At the end stood a door painted a soft gray. Nolan's room, he said. I had the design team put it together last week. He said he wanted a planet wall. She reached for the handle and pushed it open. The room exploded with color. A mural of the solar system stretched across one wall with glowing stars embedded in the ceiling. A small telescope stood by the window. On the desk sat a framed photo of Nolan and Vivien, the one Silas had quietly taken that evening in her kitchen when Nolan had shown him the rocket drawings. Vivien blinked rapidly. He's going to lose his mind. He already did, Silas said. I brought him here this morning. He approved everything. He even told the decorator Pluto should have a doorbell. She laughed, turning to face him. You did all this in a week? I don't like waiting when I know what I want. Vivien stepped into the room and sat on the edge of the bed, her fingers brushing the comforter patterned with constellations. He'll feel like he belongs here. He does. She looked up. So do I. More than anyone ever has. Silas crouched in front of her, resting his hands on her knees. You believed in me before I remembered how to believe in anyone. You made me want things I didn't even know I could want. Vivien let out a long breath. I thought once you saw how complicated my life was, you'd walk. I saw your life, he said, and I ran toward it. Her eyes searched his. Are you sure you're ready for this? For bedtime stories and school pickups and days where everything's covered in glitter. I've already installed a glitter vacuum, he said with a grin. And I know how to make mac and cheese without burning it now. She laughed again, but her voice cracked. You're serious. I'm in this, he said. Fully. No conditions. No escape hatches. I want to build something here with you. Not just a room or a life. A family. She leaned forward, pressing her forehead to his. I've spent so long doing everything alone. I don't even know how to let someone help. Then let me teach you how not to. They stayed like that for a while, quiet, steady, together. Later, they walked into the kitchen, where Nolan sat at the island with a bowl of strawberries and a handful of Lego pieces. He looked up and grinned. Mom! He showed me the garage. There's a robot vacuum and a car that has its own name. Vivien raised an eyebrow as she took a strawberry. What's the car's name? Artemis, Silas said. Nolan named her. Nolan nodded solemnly. She's going to take us to the aquarium tomorrow, right? Silas looked at Vivien. Only if your mom says yes. Vivien smiled. Sounds like a plan. They ate on the terrace that night, nothing fancy. Just grilled cheese sandwiches and fresh fruit. Nolan's favorite. Silas let Nolan stay up an hour past bedtime. They watched the stars come out, Nolan perched on his new beanbag chair in his pajamas, clutching his stuffed astronaut. When Vivien tucked him in, she lingered in the doorway. Silas came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. He's happy, she whispered. So are you, he said. She turned to face him. I didn't think I could be. You deserve to be. She studied him. You're not going to wake up one morning and realize this is all too much? I already woke up, he said. The day I fell on that sidewalk. Vivien leaned her head against his chest. What now? Now, he said, we make this real? And they did. The following spring they married in a quiet ceremony in the garden behind the brownstone. Vivien wore a simple ivory dress and Nolan walked her down the aisle proudly holding a small bouquet of white tulips. Silas wore a navy suit and couldn't take his eyes off her. They didn't host a lavish reception, just close friends, laughter, music, and a chocolate cake that Nolan helped decorate. Vivien kept working at the hospital, but she cut her shifts back. Silas restructured his entire company to step away from day-to-day operations. He still took meetings, but only between school drop-offs and piano recitals. They traveled to places Vivien had never dreamed of. Nolan saw the northern lights. They visited observatories and walked through science museums on 3 continents. Silas never once brought his laptop. On the anniversary of the day they met, he bought the brownstone where Vivien had patched him up and surprised her by restoring it room by room, keeping everything exactly as it had been, except now it was theirs. "What are you doing?" she'd asked, standing in the doorway of her old kitchen. "Giving you the one place you never had to pretend," he said. "You made me a home. I'm making it ours." Years passed. Their love didn't quiet. It deepened, grew richer. They faced hard days, illnesses, tough decisions, school meetings, but they faced them together. Always together. And every year, without fail, Silas brought home white tulips. Not because they were her favorite, but because they were the first thing he ever gave her that made her stop running. One evening, as the sun dipped below the skyline, Vivien stood on their rooftop terrace, watching Nolan through the window as he adjusted his telescope. Silas came up behind her, slipping his arms around her waist. "You ever think about that day?" she asked. "The fall. I think about the woman who refused to let me get up." She laughed, resting her head against his. "Lucky for me, you listened. Lucky for me," he whispered, "you stayed." He kissed her then, slow and certain, the city glowing behind them, the sound of Nolan's laugh echoing from inside. And in that moment, there was nothing missing. Nothing broken. Just a life they'd built, piece by imperfect piece, together. Forever.